Andy Wilson from The Traveller in the Evening, but I'm here tonight to introduce and present to you Timothy Morton, who we're extremely lucky and honoured to have with us. And Tim will be talking about his new book, which is released next month, I think on Earth Day, and it's entitled Hell, in Search of a Christian Ecology. But anyway, as I say, we're very lucky to have Tim with us tonight. And so for those who don't know Tim, Tim is, every meeting I've seen, I had a look at a few meetings Tim's done. Every meeting starts ritualistically by saying, Tim is the Rita Shea Guffey Chair of English at Rice University in Houston, Texas. Tonight, in talking about his book, with the title of the meeting is The Marriage of Religion and the Biosphere, which is obviously a hat tip to Blake. But in terms of introducing Tim, first of all, as I say, he's the chair of English at Rice University. Unless you're one of his students, though, it's more likely that you'll know him, if you know him at all, through his books, of which he has written many. I haven't counted them all, but there's a lot. And I noticed there's a kind of arc to that. There's early on, Tim wrote quite a lot about Shelley specifically, and then more generally about Romanticism. I know there's a book about the spice race, about colonialism, Romanticism, and so on. But the books I've read mostly by Tim are in the area of ecology, where his thoughts on ecology are closely linked to his thoughts on philosophy or object-oriented ontology. Hopefully more about that later. But Tim's also written books on Buddhism, and as I say, his latest book. I really want to recommend a couple of books, that small ones that don't normally get mentioned. The headline books are, Dark Ecology, the book on hyperobjects, which I think has had a huge impact, certainly had a big impact on me in terms of understanding global warming and ecology and related issues. But I really want to recommend a couple. One being, what was it called? All Art is Ecological, which Sybil Earle, the chair of the Blake Society, got me to read a couple of years ago when we were doing the Vala issue of that's the Blake Society Journal, which was themed about nature. And she was recommending to me people I really, really ought to have read. And she recommended that book, and it's a tremendous way to get going. I also want to recommend a book called Spacecraft that Tim wrote for an absolutely splendid series called, what's it called? Object Lessons, Bloomsbury. And I'll leave it at that. But go and have a look at the Bloomsbury Object Lessons, but the Spacecraft book in particular is absolutely fascinating. I've got a note here that says that Tim has also written 250 essays in all sorts of languages, and I feel a collection of Tim's essays coming on somewhere. And Tim has also collaborated with all sorts of people you may have heard of. I won't name them all, but when I mentioned Pharrell Williams to my son, 14-year-old son Hux, he said, do you know how many followers Pharrell Williams has on Twitter, Dad? He has over 10 million. So he was pretty awed. But Tim's also worked with Jeff Bridges on a film that I think wrote the script for, or some of it, and also with Bjork and Laurie Anderson and many others. So in terms of Tim's new book, one of the things about the books that I mentioned earlier is the new book is absolutely, as Tim says, not about Blake, but written with Blake. And it's absolutely thoroughly saturated with Blake, is the way I would put it, which is kind of weird because, in the things I've seen, Tim hasn't written a lot about Blake in the past. And now all of a sudden there's this big bang. And there's all sorts of interesting things about that because I sort of feel as I traveled on a similar trajectory in the sense that I come from an atheist background, a Marxist and an activist, things like that. But through reading Blake, I've never had a born again kind of experience. But through reading Blake, I kind of ended up becoming a Christian. It also snuck up on me in some strange way. I found it was the only way to make sense of the world once I'd read a lot of Blake. But that's a kind of, when we were talking about nature and the issue of Vala, I was talking to Sybil about that. It's the first time I thought a lot about Blake and politics, but I thought about him in terms of, the ranters and antinomianism and the dissenting tradition, but I'd never really thought about him specifically in relationship ecology, and immediately I realized it was a bit of a weird one, because on first pass, Blake sounds really, really hostile to nature. And, he says it's, it's the devil's work, it's Satan. And so it's an odd point of departure to write a book about ecology. Of course, there's a lot more to it than that. But in introducing Tim, really, I want to ask you a two-part question, Tim, to get going. And the first part of the question is just, we often ask the speakers at the Blake Study, how did you get to know Blake? And I know you tell the story in your book, but I'm particularly interested in your experience of singing Jerusalem at St. Paul's, because, when Blakeans talk about Jerusalem, we always just assume this big uplifting sense of unity. And it's absolutely wonderful to hear a completely different point of view, because I think Jerusalem is quite problematic. But the other thing I want to ask you is the obvious question, is given that Blake says that nature is basically Satan, given that in some ways you agree with, hell is the physical world, is one of the things you say. And it's obviously the theme of your book. How did you put those things together? How did you make sense of ecology through Blake?
Andy, it's very lovely of you to introduce me, and I love these questions, and I'm very, very touched to be talking with you this evening today at the Blake Society. All kinds of things I'm going to be saying are really tied to that feeling of being incredibly touched to be doing this. This is very important for me. One thing that was coming up for me when I was looking at the things on the intro, wonderful things that Andy put together, some things that I said in the book, and I just sort of thought, wow, did I really say those things? Did I say them? And I still am surprised. I often am surprised by my stuff. I try to say things that I didn't know already. Can you tell? It's sort of like, why would I want to say something that I know already? That would just be kind of repeating the past, right? I'm interested in the future, there were many points in this book, and I felt like in a way, the spirit of Blake touching me. Any book about hell needs a guide, right? So, Dante's got Virgil and Blake's got Milton, and I've got Blake in a way. And I found myself writing and actually not knowing what I was saying, but looking at the computer going, oh God, that's really good. I wonder what I'm going to say next, right? I wonder what my fingers are going to type next, in particular, the topic of this little talk that I'm going to give, right, which is the marriage of religion and the biosphere, which is actually, of course, a translation of something that Blake said, because he wrote a book called The Marriage of Heaven and Hell. Who's getting married to who? Well, in a way, ideas, thoughts, stuff that we think, whatever those are, memes, tweets, blog posts, editorials, books, everything like that's getting married to the body. Yeah, it's getting married to the body that grew out of the biosphere, that actually evolved out of it. That's who's getting married to who, I think. I've been a Blake fan all my life. I actually, before I sang Jerusalem, the hymn, I was going to a room that the security guy called Blake 7. People who are as old as me will remember the sci-fi show Blake 7 from the 70s, fantastic sci-fi show. And Blake was in room 7 of the Tate Gallery, which is now the Tate Britain, right? It was this, at that point, he was in the middle of the gallery, and something tragic happened when BP or whatever that was started funding the Tate Gallery, and they put Blake upstairs like the mad guy in the attic. Where's my Blake gone? And where's this beautiful smoked glass quietness? If anybody remembers that room, right? You go in the room and it's really quiet in there. It's right in the middle of the building. There's all the Samuel Palmers in there. Oh my word, so I bought a little book. I was maybe about 10 years old, started looking at it. My father had already gotten The Ancient of Days, this huge big print of it, and he put it in front of the fireplace at home. And I must have been about maybe 6 or maybe 5 when he got that. So this Blake was there, and I didn't do my PhD on Blake, actually, Andy. It's a good question, because he was too close. Because I sort of thought, if I do a dissertation on Blake at this point, it's just going to be me going, check this next quotation out. It's really amazing. And that's not really good enough for a dissertation. There's got to be some kind of grippy something, right? So I was really puzzled by Shelley. You know, I was really puzzled by this guy who wrote about food in this very enlightenment way that was, I found very hard to deal with because of being a Blakean, really, actually. And so I sort of thought, let's write about him. And, you know, another part of it, I wouldn't dare to write a book about Blake. It's also arrogant to say you wrote the book with Blake, so it's kind of like you're screwed either way, you know. But I don't think I could write it about him, and in particular right now, you know. So I've got this lecture, you know, and the first word here is humble, yeah, because this isn't me telling you how cool I am at reading Blake, right? Or how what your way of reading Blake, whoever you are in the audience, is wrong or less as good than me, and I'm performing some kind of academic, whatever that is. That's it. It's factually not true on many levels. You know, my conversations, for example, with John Riordan and Andy over the last few weeks have made it very clear how little I know, really. And, you know, so what I want to do is go through the feeling. Yeah, go through the feeling of it, which is not actually secondary to the idea. The feeling's actually in front of the idea, because in a funny way, feelings are from the future. Yeah, feelings are ideas that you haven't had yet. Yeah, like why else would you go to therapy? You're having a funny feeling inside. You don't have words for it, right? So in a way, feelings are from the future. This stuff inside you is from the future. Yeah, and ideas about it are the past, right? Like by definition, words that we have for things were created sometime 5 minutes ago or whatever, or 500 years ago. They're in the past. They are the past, you know. This thing here is like a picture of everything that happened to Tim, right? If you look at it really closely, you can see there was this acne when I was 19 years old, really bad. I was the poster child for Accutane, for Roaccutane, right at the beginning of that. Then, you know, so this is the past you're looking at, not just in a sophisticated speed of light way, but just like literally like, so when you're looking at a poem as well, you're looking at the past, you're looking at all kinds of decisions that an author made, all kinds of authors, right? Like Blake wrote the poem, Capitalism wrote the poem, the Biosphere wrote the poem, all kinds of authors made these decisions in the past, yeah? But what on earth is this poem? Yeah, who the hell is this Tim Morton guy? That's why you're here, right? Like that's the future. Yeah, when you're looking at someone or you're looking at a poem, you're looking at a kind of crisscross between the past and the future, right? And I'm always trying to talk from the future, you know. And it's in that hymn Jerusalem, right? I will not cease from mental fight, nor shall my sword sleep in my hand. I'm sorry if I'm using shall and will wrongly, till we have built Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land, because it's in the future, because it wasn't in the past, right? And did those feet in ancient time? No, they didn't. No, they weren't anywhere, actually. It's kind of what I feel that he's sort of saying, yeah. But it's taken me until this long to kind of get there, because I got gaslighted so bad by that hymn, which Monty Python rightly uses all the time to express some kind of public school British imperial, you know, this is the trouble with ideology, right? It's like, let's take the lovely juicy bit that people actually live by, and then let's weaponize it and turn it into something horrible. And of course, you know, John Parry said it to music, and it had almost turned into, when I was singing it, a kind of this patriotic thing. Of course, it's in the last night of the proms. If you live in Britain, you know what that is, right? In the Albert Hall, every year there are these concerts, very cheap. Jerusalem is a song that gets sung there in the kind of building built within the height of British imperialism. And I went to this very posh school. I was a very poor scholarship boy at the school John Milton went to. I was a poor scholarship boy at St. Paul's School. And that's another sort of tied there with Blake. Milton was also a poor scholarship boy at the school, right? The beginning of the school, St. Paul's, they were like, let's take poor kids from around the neighborhood, boys, and let's give them the operating systems of 3 different kinds of language and then set them free to do whatever, right? So Milton got Latin, Greek, and Hebrew. Wow. And then I looked up Milton's education recently, and it was actually weirdly similar to how I'd been educated, almost with the same books, the same text. Yeah. Good idea. but maybe less good eventually when people are singing it who, you know, like, so the class bully became the guy in charge of all the troops in Afghanistan in the early 2000s. I was bullied by this guy, you know, so this guy was singing "Nor shall my sword sleep in my hand," and possibly imagining picking up a sword or possibly even a torture implement, you know, to torture people. So this got very confusing for me, you know, and one of the ways ideology works, you just have to repeat it, right? This is the trouble with the fascism that's happening right now. Like, all you have to do to be a fascist is hit retweet. You don't need to have ideas. In fact, it's better if you don't, because it requires you to be a kind of pod person, right? And not to be a human being, but actually just to be a kind of droid that's just constantly hitting retweet on the nastiest, most toxic thing that's kind of out there. Yeah. So, by the way, it's lovely to be actually talking to somebody representing the entire room here. I'm looking at Andy while I'm talking. It's nice to actually talk to a person, and I feel like Blake is a person, you know, and his whole thing is about people, and my whole thing about ecology is about people. You know, it's kind of almost, the word is a pejorative term created within imperialism. It's almost animism, yeah. And maybe one of the lessons of whatever literary theory was that after a few decades of it, some white kids were able to think animism. You know, that's basically object-oriented ontology right there. And actual shamans like Ansel Dua got jobs at Duke University, were able to write about things. And, you know, how come you could sing this Christian hymn and then go to war against that? Well, I'm actually think that's kind of the, if you're going to put it in Christian terms, that's the war against the Holy Spirit, is the war of imperial countries, you know, enslaving people and making profits out of that. And Blake obviously lived during a moment of intense, you know, intensity of that. Yeah. And so, you know, what to do? One thing to do, so I think, you know, when you say this word Gnosticism, it often means, you know, we're spiritual beings trapped in a horrible physical universe created by this demonic God, right? And it beautifully explains, you know, if it needs explaining, the problem of evil. Like, it's, well, because we're in the wrong God's universe, right? Imagine living under George III. You don't have to. He's the spitting image of Trump. Just Google images, Gilray, George III, you get the profile of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the return of the coronavirus that is in the American Constitution, because America and Britain overlapped with slavery, right? And they never dealt with it. Yeah, but the part of the mission of this book is profoundly anti-racist. Yeah. And part of my ecological mission is profoundly about, until human beings get on with each other, we're never going to get on with other life forms properly. Yeah. And I feel like racism is the reason why speciesism happens, actually. You know, so part of living in a raw, ecologically just world is forging better, more just relationships between human beings. Yeah. And, you know, it's uncanny that George III has come back. Yeah, this great big fat moron, you know, I'm assuming, you know, a criminal. Yeah, criminal moron. Like Parsifal, unfortunately, like the white Jesus, you know, blonde guy from whatever kind of Grail legend in whatever kind of country, who's going to save the Grail Knights, right? He's going to save the fascists. And, you know, sort of like from a kind of evangelical point of view, Jesus would have chosen the disguise this time of a criminal, moron, blonde, rich idiot to come back in, because that would be the perfect disguise now, wouldn't it, right? Said Tim bitterly, you know, because I live in this country where slavery is explicit, right? Like, Britain outsourced it to the Caribbean, as we say over here, and the Americas. And so there's a way in which when you arrive here, when you work here, you see it immediately. And it's just there. You got to deal with it. You got to do something about it. You know, and I feel like Blake is profoundly against slavery. And one of the things that enslavement is driving is the kind of subject-object distinction that is part of what we think about when we think about, you know, mountains and rivers and bunny rabbits. And the subject-object distinction, in a way, is satanic, right? Nature isn't the biosphere. Nature is an idea in your head, yeah, designed to make people feel bad, right? Like, so for example, where I live right now in Texas, there's all these laws being passed which are giving people permission to burst into some poor primary school librarian's office and get her fired for having a book that is vaguely, according to them, sexualized in some way, right? They're able to, they have this idea that some things are unnatural, right? There's natural and unnatural. Natural implies unnatural, you know. Nature is what one might say is normative, right? It's like it sets a rule for what counts as natural or not. Yeah. That's not the biosphere. The biosphere is this incredible mutant, alive thing where full of beauty. It's run on accidents, right? It's run on contingency. It's run on natural selection, which is random. It's run on symbiosis, which is random encounters between beings. And it's run on sexual display, which is totally trans beauty. Yeah, like case in point, Darwin thought peacock feathers were disgusting. That's kind of disgusting means too much pleasure. Yeah. So whenever I think of a peacock's tail, I get really grossed out. Why? Because I'm having the feeling that a male peacock would have, but I'm a human being. I'm a guy. I'm looking at a male peacock's tail. I'm finding it great. That's all the female peacock's doing as well, right? You think that sense of beauty of the peacock's tail could only be confined to the peacock, right? That's not how evolution works. Evolution is incredibly cheap. And the beauty is spread all around, right? And I think suddenly about the pride of the peacock in the Blake Proverbs of Hell, you know, and the exuberance of the beauty of the biosphere, and to kind of use another Blake word, right? So our world is a gorgeous, beautiful world, actually. I think if anything, the Blake that I'm talking about, or the Blake who's helped me to think some of these ideas, is to do with what I'm calling flipped Gnosticism. Flipped Gnosticism. It's not that we are spiritual beings trapped in a world of matter. It's that we're lovely, broken, beautiful, contingent, random, accidental, physical beings trapped in a universe of horrible, terrible, oppressive ideas. Yeah, it's the other way around. We, in a way, the silence and the muteness, if you're going to be religious about it, in a good way, the silence, the fact that God isn't anywhere, like we are the silence of God, in a way. Gnosticism calls God the silence. Yeah, and the fundamental kind of fragile, unspeakable beauty of the physical universe is like the footprint of God. It's God going, shh, right? Like Milton's first word of creation is shh, silence, right? Shh, quiet. You know, another hymn that we sung that was cool was "Let all mortal flesh keep silence." It's Greek, right? Sigapato pantasarx protea. And Greek Orthodoxy's got that mystical thing going on, right? That was kind of cool that they did that one in school. And Blake is an amazing Miltonist, right? Blake is an incredible Miltonist. And I wanted to start actually by sharing my screen and sharing with you the beginning of the poem Milton, where Blake is evoking Milton. Milton evokes the Holy Spirit, of course, at the beginning of Paradise Lost, right? The spirit, yeah, the spirit of life, not as a biological concept or as a juridical concept, like this thing has a right to live, like this thing is alive and this thing isn't alive, but as a kind of vibrational, you know, you could say almost quantum theoretical sort of trembly quality of alive, right? Hovering over the waters, you know, it's almost quantum theoretically correct, right? The ground state quivering of the void. So if I may, I'm going to share my screen. and with any luck, I'm going to be able to show you the first bit of Milton here, which you should be seeing now. Is that correct, Andy? Are you guys seeing that?
See it? Yep.
Very good. Daughters of Beulah. Beautiful paradise. Yeah, there's earthly paradise. Muses who inspire the poet's song record the journey of immortal Milton through your realms of terror and mild moony luster, in soft sexual delusions of varied beauty to delight the wanderer and repose. He's talking about like having a lovely idea based on lovely feelings inside of you, right? His burning thirst and freezing hunger. Come into my hand by your mild power. Like he's actually literally talking about having the idea coming into his body, because that would be better than just having it in there. Like embody it. Yeah. Come into my hand by your mild power, descending down the nerves of my right arm from out the portals of my brain. What, this is genius. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of this where I just quote this and go, wow, you know, where by your ministry, the eternal great humanity divine, this is the topic, planted his paradise, the paradise within. Yeah, as Milton would say, paradise within thee, happy afar. And you have to ask yourself this question. Did Raphael, was he just joking? Was God just screwing with you by allowing Raphael to say that? Or was that actually, is it actually an improvement on Eden, right? This thing here. Yeah, or is Eden actually an improvement on heaven and hell? Because heaven and hell are like, in a way, they're just like really good ideas, but ideas are always a bit demonic, right? They don't ever die. They always get everywhere. You know, they in general, they make you feel bad. It's like having too many ideas. It's like you eat too much sugar, you know. And in this paradise where the eternal great humanity planted his paradise, and in it caused the specters of the dead to take sweet form in likeness of himself. Like you imagine beautiful poems with words based on the past. You can do it. Yeah. Tell also of the false tongue, vegetated beneath your land of shadows, of its sacrifices. Like these are the really bad ideas. Yeah. And its offerings, even till Jesus, image of the invisible God. He said, look what we did to this guy who is the very embodiment of just silently enduring the physical world. He said, let everybody turn you into their scapegoat and crucify you. Became its prey, a curse, an offering, and an atonement for death eternally, an idea, right? If I do this, then this will happen. Yeah. In the heavens of Albion and before the gates of Jerusalem is emanation, in the heavens beneath Beulah. So how the hell did that happen? You know, and sort of Milton is fighting that. And Blake's like, I'm going to redouble this. I'm going to go there, you know. I'm going to go there by, let me just, I'm going to stop my share right now. And I'm going to find another thing for you. And also from Milton, which Andy found. Yeah, Andy found this. It's beautiful. And it really talks to something that I want to talk about. So with any luck, we'll get it. Let's see. It's this one. I'm hoping this is one about Andy, is that the one about the fly, or are we back to the Daughters of Beulah? Yeah.
Olalon, no, I don't think
Wonderful.
it is.
Wonderful.
I think it's the there was a moment today.
Oh, there is a moment. Okay. Let me stop the share and try the other one. They're all rather obscure, and I'm doing this a little bit by feel.
Well, while you look for it, Tim, I want to say when you bring up why I suggested it to you, because it just reminded me of some of your ideas. You know, we're here to talk about Blake, but you brought all these other ideas to the table from OOO, from philosophy, and one of them is about, you know, the objects that exist, this kind of democracy of objects, this flat ontology, as they say. And when I read that, I thought of Blake, because I thought of his attitude to, you know, the quote you're looking for is about the flies dancing together, you know, in the summer. And he says something like, with inside, they are open to eternity. And it very much reminded me of a sort of philosophical point you make about the nature of objects having an abyss within themselves. So I sort of made that connection with it. And what it made me think more generally was just that, you know, all of these ideas about this kind of expanded animism, recognizing the beauty in nature.
Mm-hmm.
All of those things that you're saying depend on a kind of point of view, which I think is you're quite philosophically rigorous about. And I think the way you put it is that, you know, we talk about societies, the society in America today in which slavery is happening. And some people say, well, that's due to capitalism. That's due to a kind of mode of production, as they say. That's due to a way of organizing.
Mm.
But part of what you've been saying, which I do think touches deeply on Blake, is that beneath that is this there's a lower level
Yeah,
of operating system,
well put.
bit, and
It's
that
the other way around.
hierarchy and about, you know, the subject, object, and master slave relations. And to me,
Yeah.
that opens up, by explaining all of that, by talking about all of that, that throws light on what I think is Blake's fundamental attitude. I would have called it antinomianism, you know, and I think about the ranters in the English Civil War, but it's this incredible democracy that rejects that kind of thing. And I just throw that in because, you know, I was worried about our meeting, so I wanted to be about Blake. But I think that by bringing those thoughts that you've written about in the past and applying, you're making Blake a radical again, not as a contingent thing about his thought, that he happens to be a radical with all these beautiful mystical ideas, but it's absolutely central to his thought, is the rejection of those hierarchies.
Yeah, I actually didn't have time to find the Milton page, so I'm going to read it instead, which is, seest thou the little winged fly, smaller than a grain of sand? It has a heart like thee, a brain open to heaven and hell, with inside wondrous and expansive. Its gates are not closed. I hope thine are not. Hence it clothes itself in rich array. Hence thou art clothed with human beauty, O thou mortal man. Wow, right? So this thing here, let's go back to, I'm typing away this book, right? And I'm going, wow, what are my fingers gonna do next? And in a way that was recursive to the idea that I was having, because the idea I was having was, okay, so this is really boring, just basic biology. You don't need any biology to get this, right? Nerve signals to your brain, let's assume sentience is like nerve signals, right? They might not be like neurons, they could be like the plant version, right? But like signals to whatever that is, take time to arrive. I don't know how much time. Let's say they take a few 100 milliseconds. Yeah. So this thing here that I'm feeling, this sensation, the look of Andy on the computer, the everything, this is not some kind of speed of light thing even. This is just basic thinking about chemistry, right? All this stuff is late, right, to the party. This thing here in the present moment, the so-called present moment, relative to the sensation about it that I'm having, including the ideas that I'm having, is the future. The biological world, this biosphere that I'm in, which includes the books, right? Because these are all expressions of the human genome. Yeah, everything in this world, like my funny greasy face, everything here is the future, right? It's like our sense of that, not just our ideas about it, but our actual physical sensation of that is ever so slightly out of phase with it. Yeah, okay, that idea, park that one, right? Religion. It kind of almost doesn't matter which one. Buddhism, Hinduism, Judaism, Islam, Christianity, they always have these days, that is for the last few hundred years, some kind of VIP lounge in them, right? And you go in the VIP lounge and they go, well, you've merited access to the VIP lounge of the religion now. You're tame enough, you know, you're not going to blow it when you get in this lounge. There might be good and bad reasons to let you in the lounge, right? And they say all that stuff about a guy who mostly wants to hurt you was just kind of to control people, and that's not really what it is. The reality is you are that thing a bit, right? Whether it be the Godhead, Meister Eckhart, or Buddha nature, Buddhism, right? The Brahman, right? Hinduism. You sort of are that. And your job now that you know that is just to recognize it. You just recognize it over and over again. It doesn't matter the ideas you have about it. You just recognize it. And you get this meditation instruction, right? I'm I've received a lot of esoteric Buddhism, so I know this about the Buddhism, but then I start reading some Christian ones too, right? There's a very beautiful Christian book called The Cloud of Unknowing, where the instruction is the title. It's brilliant, right? I've done a lot of Dzogchen. I've done solitary retreat. I've done 3 months meditation retreat. I know what I'm talking about a little bit, unquote, ha, ha, ha. But like, that's just be a cloud of unknowing. Wow, that, right? So you do this meditation and you're like, well, I can't find it. I can't quite. And your teacher's like, stop. Don't delete that feeling, that tantalizing feeling of you can't quite touch it. Is it in that feeling, in the phenomenological structure of I can't quite touch it, is the divine? Park that one over there, right? I'll say the first one again. The biosphere is tantalizingly out of reach. This biosphere right here, right now, that you actually are part of, is tantalizingly out of reach. It is the future. The Godhead, the Buddha nature, the divine is just tantalizingly out of reach. You are it, but you can't quite feel it. And not quite feeling it is feeling it. Check it out. Every esoteric, prove me wrong, every esoteric religion on the planet, sorry, I'm just going to make a huge, big generalization, right? Literally, this physical body is the pathway, as many people, such as Jesus and Buddha and Blake, have proclaimed, right? The pleasure part of the body, the scary, like, ooh, that's naughty. According to the rules, you're not allowed to pick these grapes on the Sabbath, right? According to the Hinduism rules, you're not allowed to eat on a meditation retreat where you're trying to burn yourself out of samsara. But this old lady comes along with a bowl of rice pudding and gives it to the Buddha, right? This is a thing. The Buddha eats the spoon of rice pudding. The cholesterol goes in. Have you ever tried not to eat any and then you suddenly eat a piece of chocolate? Like, oh, I did. I spent 6 months not eating any because I had this problem with my cholesterol. Then I started to get really sick and I ate some fish soup and I swallowed this fish soup. Wow, hyper bliss, right? Buddha, like starving himself, Siddhartha, right? For months, flagellation, burning fire. Suddenly, cholesterol, sweet, rice pudding. Oh, the pleasure is the pathway. Oh, yeah. Right? This physical thing here, yeah, is where the sacred is. And all these ideas about it, that it's over there and it's designed to kind of hurt you and make you feel bad in a way. Although I'm not disrespecting shame and guilt here. You know, a little bit of shame and guilt never did anybody any harm. There's a word for somebody with no guilt. That's psychopath. Psychopath has no guilt, right? It's kind of like, it's how you are guilty. Yeah, guilty should be an incredibly gentle feeling. I loved it that Andy took this thing where realizing you're a sinner is the nicest thing you could think about yourself. Think about it, right? Going, oh, this is the whole Blake dilemma. He puts you in the position of these people beating up on people, beating up on yourself, right? And says, try that on for size, right? Songs of innocence and of experience, portraying contrary states of the human soul. And part of that is like, I'm going to be an experienced person who knows what the score is, right? But actually, you just got older. You just got older and you might be full of it. Or you might actually have an idea. This is the trouble. It's deeply recursive because my idea of experienced gets in the way. You see, Blake's doing all these kind of amazing double, triple, quadruple whammies there with ideas that he turns into the powder, and he just sort of leaves you with the quiet, whatever, the mystery, the genuine mystery, right? Not the kind of secretive mystery that he talks about, but mystery in the nice way. Mystery comes from a Greek word, muein. Muein is onomatopoeia for going, but like you can't speak it. It's unspeakable. That the Dzogchen Buddhist term is a mute tasting sugar. Try describing sugar without saying anything about it. I want to tell you how beautiful this wall is, but I can't. I can't. I got to do all these analogies. I got to do these parables. I got to kind of do it sideways because I can't. Because why? No singles always arrive a little bit late. Simple, basic, simple, basic stuff, right? And then interesting sort of newer biological fact, right? Your sense of your environment is that, right? Then what happens? Your sentient system makes a photocopy of it and flips it upside down, right? Like environment canceling headphones, right? Like why is it quiet when you wear them? Because they sample the environment and then they invert the signal. If worms didn't do that, they would get stuck in the tunnels they're digging. Check it out, right? It's been established that proprioception, which is the basic, mere, nice, I'm not going to hurt anybody sense of self, not self, ego self, but just here, I'm here. I've got these eyes, I've got this nose. How lovely that I have ears, you know. That one is a kind of inverted silhouette of the biosphere. And guess what? By definition, that one shows up a little bit later, right? So your sense of self is a little bit later than your sense of your environment, which is a little bit later than the actual one. We've got all the pieces here for a religion, right? Religion, which is making you realize that this sense of self is actually your world, which is the divine. Just another way of putting the same thing. So everything about religion is actually everything about ecology, and everything crazy and wrong and oppressive and bad that we think about religion is everything crazy and wrong and oppressive that we think about our embodied being, and everything that we do to other human beings and other life forms based on those ideas, right? That this is a separate ego, right? Or whatever, or that this is the good one, this is the human one, this is the real one, this is the natural one, or that's the natural one, and we're the ones who aren't that. You know, I hear Hegelian, to go back to Marxism a little bit, I've trained so good in Marxism, I can destroy anyone using Hegel and Marx. Please, I could do it. I just swore off it, that's all, at age 24. I'm a Terry Eagleton student. I've read it all. I can do it.
A bit like
It just
that.
hurts. Just make people cry. You know, I can do it, but I do. Why make people cry, right? This, I got so excited about declaring my hostility to my former self that I kind of lost the plot there. But oh yeah, you often hear this crazy thing people say: humans are the only beings who make their own environment. Have you ever seen a fly? Have you ever seen a spider? This is the definition of a life form, is it makes its own environment. That's just crazy talk. That's just like weird Hegel gaslighting, you know.
Tim, can I?
Yeah,
Because we're almost at the point where we're going to hand over to the question.
please.
And I'm
Yeah.
going to take advantage of my position to ask you one. But first of all, there were some brilliant bits in your book about, I think that anyone who likes Blake really ought to read your stuff about innocence in Blake and what innocence means. And because you have a really fantastic
Sure.
take on that. And also the biology stuff, the Lynn Margulis and all of that kind of thing, you know, that you know, that we are already, we are the biosphere, all that kind of stuff. But one thing I wanted to get in was because most Blakeans, if you have an expression in there, the biosphere is the body of Christ, and it doesn't compete with this idea, but it obviously brings to mind Blake saying that, you know, the imagination is the body of Christ, and many people would, you know, think about the imagination as being absolutely like, but it's not something you really belabor in your book, and I think it's really important.
That's beautiful.
You know,
it's really important.
Yeah, no, I think it's important.
Really important.
The past, how we're dominated by the past, and you know, ideology and everything, the language we use, everything, you know, psychoanalysis, whatever you want, we're totally dominated. It's only imagination that will get us out of that hole.
And Andy, you just wrote the book for me. I always think of the idea that the book was about 2 months after I published it, like, oh, everything good about Blake's word imagination is everything actual about the biosphere, according to what I just said, right? How you live as a life form, as a sentient life form, is the biosphere. Your imagination, which is like from the future, is how the biosphere is, right? Everything about the bias, everything about imagination, which is Jesus, is everything phenomenological about the biosphere. And it's the tail that wags the dog. We've been looking in the wrong place for what life forms are. We've been looking to Richard Dawkins and Daniel Dennett and all these mechanistic people who are very reductionistic and have a religion of science based on a kind of nobodaddy of scientism, right? Which is really like in a nasty, unpleasant way of thinking about it, right? And like everything actually truly scientific as opposed to scientistic is everything about the imagination, right? Because this thing here is phenomenologically, to use a posh word, is slash in the future. Yeah. So I was going to bring in the divine image, right? To go back to Songs of Innocence. Innocence, yeah. It's horrible that the snap idea of it is ignorance. I think it's forgive me for saying this word, but it's like it's an indication of the pedophilic world that we inevitably inhabit. Unfortunately, that people associate innocence with ignorance, that like the pedophile fantasy of the innocent child, right, which is now being weaponized by the extreme right in America, where they're looking at other pedophiles they think they can see, as Blake would say, they became what they beheld, right? And really, innocence, you know about law. Innocent means you didn't harm anybody. It's there, it's staring you in the face. It doesn't mean ignorance, it means harmlessness, right? And in particular, in Blake, a kind of weaponized harmlessness, a kind of boy who saw the emperors without the clothes, harmlessness, kind of Greta Thunberg, harmlessness, right? They're very powerful because you didn't do any harm, right? And the divine image, right? This isn't just a picture of the divine. This is the divine image. Yeah. Case in point, says Blake, someone's about to hit you and you go, mercy, mercy, don't hit me. You spontaneously do that, right? To mercy, pity, peace, and love will pray in their distress, right? You see something horrible. You see George Floyd being murdered in the street and you go, oh, for pity's sake, pity, like you screaming at the cop to have pity, right? Love, oh, wow, you are so beautiful, right? In here is all the lovely goodies. Yeah. Then, of course, the inverse, which is the song of experience, right? Which is the song of I've got it all figured out, which is the human abstract. It's interesting. Experience and innocence are kind of like this. Like experience is the opposite of not knowing something, but you're knowing something in the key of a lie, right? A lot of ideology is a lie in the form of the truth, right? Pity would be no more if we didn't make somebody poor, correct? If there was a nicely functioning welfare state, we wouldn't be having this conversation, or would we? Right? And mercy no more would be if all were happy as we. And the ideas just kind of accumulate and accumulate in actually this very idiotic, childish way in the poem. And then this, and then that, and then this, and then that, until we're totally covered in ideas. And then there's the sort of picture at the bottom, because Blake's a meme guy. He's making these memes, right? Where you got these words and these images. And the picture is of the guy's tying himself into his own net. And suddenly you realize, oh, I'm doing that. Reading the poem is a little machine for making me go, we're stuck, we're trapped in these ideas. And this is the flipped Gnosticism that I'm talking about. We're beautiful, lovely, divine, physically divine beings trapped in a universe with terrible, stupid, ugly ideas about it.
I'm going to have to pull you up there because with time we go into the questions. It is ironic because, you're in full flow there and that was just fantastic stuff. And I have so many questions myself, but it's not my turn. And oddly enough, I have to stop you talking just so that we can do that ritual thing where we have a minute or two silence.
Thank you.
While people decide who wants to ask the first question. But there was so much in what you said there. I have loads of questions myself. I throw the meeting open now to everybody to ask any questions you have of Tim and wherever you want to drill down a bit further or disagree or whatever it is. So as I said earlier, if you want to ask questions in the chat, have a look down the bottom, open the chat, and you can ask a question there and I'll relay the question for you. But it would be really much nicer if you just could indicate, and I'll try and see, I'm going to hide, get rid of that. Yeah, so if you could indicate, put your hand up, which I think you have to go to the reactions button down the bottom there, or maybe you click on it, I don't know. But if you put your hand up, I will be calling you in. It says here, use the raise hand icon in the reactions tab if you'd like to contribute. So yeah, who's got questions?
Well, somebody asked a question here in the chat. Thank you for asking that. How is guilt useful? Isn't a sense of responsibility enough? Yeah, I've often made a distinction, actually. That's a good one. between responsibility and guilt, right? Responsibility is cool because it's scalable. You know, you can have group responsibility, and even if you don't do it, you're responsible because you understand it, understood it, right? And guilt has been kind of individualized, and it's very kind of on off, right? Whereas there can be amounts of responsibility. You can be 50% responsible, 0.1% responsible. American white guy, 99.999% responsible for a lot, especially global warming, you know. Pacific Islander, 0.0000001, if that, right? Guilt, on the other hand, is guilty or not guilty, like in the court of law. But the trouble is that, as you say, the idea's been messed around with so much. Maybe it's not so great to use it. But you know, in a funny way, I think in the lineage of deconstruction where thoughts and ideas are very slidey and slippery. And if you've heard me say guilt is no good, I may have changed a little bit. And I may offend you by now talking a little bit guilt, because even when I'm writing that, I'm also thinking, you know, there are many people I know who don't have guilt or shame. It's called psychopath, right? They have no anxiety. They're perfectly calm. And mass murderers are incredibly calm, mindful people. You know, the kind of mindfulness meditation that corporations do is like that, right? Like how to be attention in the moment, you know, attentively killing the chicken with a knife, you know, carefully murdering, you know, that's not cool.
Tim, you talk in the book about responsibility and guilt, and I think there's a key idea here, which I'd like you to talk about in regard to the environment. So I was on the supporters of Just Stop Oil page on Facebook today, and somebody literally posted about each nation's contribution to global warming and, you know, how much oil and so on. And then, you know, Britain had a little bit of slice of the pie up there, and they said, well, there's so many people, so that means I am responsible for you know, recurring 0.1%. What am I supposed to, you know, it's not my fault kind of thing. What am I supposed to do about that? And I think you make some really nice points about if you see something happening, you're responsible. You know, it's not sort of guilt.
Exactly. Yeah, I think, you know, here's another way to think about it, right? A fascist, yeah, we have this problem in the world right now, which is that some white guys are not going down without a fight. And a fascist is someone who knows that they're the goodie. Yeah, all the people who attacked the Capitol building on January the 6th, 2021 knew that they were the good guys. Yeah, thinking that you might be the bad guy is what being a good guy feels like. Yeah, like thinking that you might be a bit rubbish of a teacher, please say yes, is what being a good teacher feels like. Yeah, feeling that you might be a bit of a crappy dad is what being a good dad feels like. Feeling that you might be a bit of a shitty country is what being a truly great America would feel like, right? Like, yeah, we enslaved millions of people. Look, structural racism, it's called whiteness. It's in my body. Yeah, so I'm now I understand that I'm responsible to do something about it. And so yeah, the that feeling, you know, of maybe I'm bad. You know, maybe I'm wrong. That's being scientifically great. It's like, maybe I'm wrong. Like Einstein writing E equals MC squared knows 20 years from now, 2 minutes from now, 20 million years from now, this equation will be less right or totally wrong. He knows it because he's a genius. In the equation writing, he knows he could be wrong. Yeah, but and it's true, right? It's true, but it could be wrong.
I still have no hands raised, so I want to encourage people to do that. But so there is a question from Helen Burnett in the chat. But Helen, would you like to ask the question yourself? And if we have, there you are.
Hi, yes, I'm just fascinated by this idea of incarnated humanity as having that spark of divinity within us and having that capacity for good through knowing that we are inherently sinners. And I've been thinking a lot. I'm actually facilitating part of the Green Christian Gathering at Athona in in September, and we've just had a Zoom call about how we live in this world that is, in a very pragmatic way, overwhelmingly wicked and evil. And we can't work in that world at a global level. And we can't know what it is within God's deep time to have any effect, should we even be so presumptuous as to think we might have an effect. And hearing Andy talk about JSO and thinking, what are the things that we, and I'm an ordained priest in the Church of England, so I put my hand up to that. What is it that I'm fascinated by what you say about knowing to have that guilt, because I really with the word of having guilt, but knowing what it is to see your place in the world as is the opposite to thinking of the good guy. I'm really wanting to unpack that in my own head.
Yes.
But in the meantime, here we all are in this Blakean world of horror, and trying to hold tight onto the innocence. But we're all
Helen, you froze a little.
Yeah, I think Helen's
we're also active beings. What is it that
There are so many people here, maybe comments is better.
yeah, I think
But I heard.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think I got cut off.
It's all right. I heard in here. Because the other reason to write this book, right? Am I audible, Andy?
Yes, you are. Yes, no problem.
The reason to write the motivation to write this book. Okay, what you're saying is incredibly serious, right? So Claire, my daughter Claire, 18 years old, yeah, and she came in the kitchen, and she's crying. This was 2021. She's 17, 18 years old. I said, Daddy, we're in hell. We live in hell. Teenage kids are going around the world right now thinking we're in hell. She'd been watching a school shooting video and reading the comments about it. And she's very ecologically tuned, as you can imagine. And she's saying, we live in hell, Daddy, we're in hell. And I'm thinking, what do I do? What do I do with this? How do I act as a parent of this girl who is horrified? She's horrified. This is a horrifying world. And when you said horrified, I smiled, actually, because part of it is noticing that this is horrible is part of how to unhorrible. I'm a graduate of 25 years of therapy, and 2 years of PTSD therapy. And it's starting with the basic horror, and being able to tune to it a bit. And so I answered Claire, from as best as I could. I said, yes, this is hell. This is hell. We live in hell. Take your pick of anyone, but of anything, but global warming would be big on my list. But in the name of heaven on earth, some people are literally turning Earth into hell. They are turning the biosphere into chemistry, literally, by extracting oil and burning it. They are turning life into chemicals. And the world of chemicals is a world of revenge. The world of life is chemicals having mercy on themselves a little bit. We're in hell. And so I said, yeah, we're in hell, Claire, because you don't want to delete the child experience, right? You want you to join. And then Oliver the cat walked in, and I said, oh, Oliver must also be in hell. So now we have an interesting thing, because we still have to feed Oliver, don't we? Even though we're in hell, Oliver's in hell. We have to look after Oliver. And then I thought, oh, book. Because a lot of my work is, if you start with the bad stuff, like Bertolt Brecht would say, you start with the bad new things. You start with the fallenness, you start with the horror, right? then you can build from there, rather than going la 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 la, it hasn't really happened yet, la la la, and you're trying to postpone the apocalypse kind of thing. That makes it worse in all kinds of ways. It makes it worse. And the way people yell about it, the way people like me yell when they talk about, you're going to be laughing on the other side of your face when you find out the science was right. I'm talking about my friend Adam, whose birthday it is today. Adam McKay made a film called Don't Look Up about a comet, and nobody cares. The lamestream media doesn't cover it. Unfortunately for Adam, Joe truck driver from Texas already knows that. Joe, evangelical truck driver, knows there's a comet coming to destroy the Earth. Joe truck driver knows that the lamestream media isn't covering it. But unfortunately, Joe truck driver knows something that Adam doesn't know. Hollywood doesn't know. I'm so sorry. I think I get paid to say the wrong thing in public. I'm going to say a scapegoat wrong thing now, which is that the stupidest version of this idea is better than all the revenge stuff that me and people like me talk. You know, like you read page 1 and it says, huge thing, bad thing about to happen. It's like read Book of Revelation, giant dragon emerges from ocean. What am I supposed to do with this? Then you turn to the middle of the paper and Eeyore, who will remain nameless, is saying, you're a bad person. You're not thinking about this right. You're getting it wrong. You're very bad. You're not doing enough. You're a bad person. Page 1, stupid. Middle of the newspaper, evil, stupid, evil, stupid, evil. Joe truck driver has the antidote. Jesus loves you anyway.
Wow.
Until people like me talk to Jesus loves you anyway, sincerely, because mercy is upper level from revenge, they are right to ignore us. I'm just going to be really blunt and say people who know Jesus loves them anyway are right to ignore people like me, threatening them with revenge, threatening them with a vengeful God in the form of scientific factoids that they dump on them in a kind of guilty-inducing, threatening way. People are right to ignore people like me who make these threatening noises, because mercy is upper level, the stupidest version of it, the stupidest, whitest, most patriarchal version of it you could possibly imagine. I'm so sorry, I say the wrong thing in public here. Joe truck driver's idea is better than my idea, sophisticated academic cool kid or Hollywood guy.
We should say, Tim,
It's better.
Tim, that the book is partly about you coming out as a born again Christian. I think, as you say in the book, go and tell it to Twitter. Tim Morton is a bloody born again Christian.
I had this crazy, stupid thing happen to me as I was finishing the book. Yeah. I had this operation. I had this hernia. I had 5 different hernias in my body, and they cut me open all these different ways, and it was like LASIK for my soul. You know, they cut your eye open and it kind of reforms. And no, you know, psychotherapist or shaman on the planet would be legally, like, they'd be like, oh, that's a good idea. Let's cut this guy open 5 different ways, you know. But it happened anyway. And from there, a lot of stuff happened. You know, I connected with my long lost stepdad, who was my real dad. I connected with the person I now married, this person, Trina, who's on Messenger, on the Messenger video there in her school in Montego Bay. Morris is also from Jamaica. And then this thing happened to me. You know, I thought I had it all figured out. I thought I'm a totally, you know, I've read the manual. I can do the Buddhism. I'm doing the prostrations. I'm doing the mantra. I know, I've got my life figured out. And then this thing happened to me, you know, and it was at the end of the book writing process. You know, like I was surprised. I'm as surprised as anybody, and I can't deny what happened and is still happening, which is like a psychosomatic, you know, this is crazy town stuff here, you know, where I've been afflicted with a kind of spiritual Tourette's syndrome. That's the other thing people get wrong about evangelism. They think it's like, I evangelize you. If you look in the Greek dictionary, it's a middle voice verb that does not have an object or a subject. It's a kind of spiritual Tourette's where you can't help going, Jesus loves you. You can't help, it's so embarrassing. You don't want to say it. You just got to. You've got to do it. You know, you've got to embarrass. You've got to sort of be an exhibitionist there. So you're quite right, Andy. This crazy thing happened to me, and now, like, seriously, with Trina, we're working on we need to be black woman, white man, C.S. Lewis 2.0. I'm sorry to, that sounds really arrogant, but there can be lots of C.S. Lewis 2.0, you know, and just model talking about stuff with each other. You know, Trina's a very interesting person because she's her whole family's Pentecostalist, Jamaican people, right? And her brother is a pastor. The mum is like a guru level of Pentecostalism. And, but she won't set foot in a church. She's got this Simone Weil thing where the church is evil, but she can't deny God. So we have this church of two. That's what we call it. We're in the church of two, and we're just figuring it out right now. Just writing stuff together and figuring it out. What are we going to do? Because we got to help people, because this world is going crazy, you know. And someone like me's got to start talking this way, if only for tactical reasons. People like me ceded a massive territory to fascism. I never got the memo that explicitly said, if you've read a lot of Foucault and Lacan, which I have, and Irigaray, you shouldn't talk about Jesus and as soon as Irigaray started to talk about prana and yoga, that's when people in my world were like, oh, she's gone crazy now. We don't have to listen to her. She's just gone crazy. Yeah. But that's the interesting bit, you know. Since when, you know, like Terry Eagleton, you know, like casting aspersions on everything, but actually being a Catholic Marxist, right? Like a Catholic guy, but he never says God. He never did that. He never was upfront about it, you know. And people like me in the 60s and 50s, you know, in our patriarchal kind of, I'm right because I'm a white guy way, would say, Jesus didn't say that. He didn't mean that. And so a lot of people got educated nicely to behave. We've just ceded all that territory. I'm saying MAGA's my fault. I'm actually saying that.
Tim, we now have I was going to say a sea of hands. It's not exactly a sea, but we have quite a few people who want to ask questions. So I'd like to call in William Rubel. If you could, William, if you'd like to unmute yourself and turn your video on and ask your question or make your point.
Let me just make sure about my background in my video, and I'll turn on. Okay, yeah. Well, yeah, thank you so much, Timothy. It's been really amazing conversation. And what you're saying right now, I really resonate with. Like in graduate school, some years back, there are so many things you're just not allowed to say, even if you're working on Blake. It's incredible. But the things that you talked about that really hit me was, you know, Blake says this explicitly over and over. On the one hand, nature is satanic, and on the other hand, nature is imagination. And he's asking us to make that shift from one way of seeing the world through ideas like you're saying. I think that's a nice way of putting it. And the other is how do we get beyond the conceptual mind to this broader mind that he's talking about, this state of imagination. And like you're saying, the world, look, that's Blake's relevance now. Like we feel so doomed, we feel so negative, and it's a cliche about him, right? That
I love it.
He started out pessimistic and got more and more optimistic. If you really adopt the Blakean point of view, it helps so much, especially
and
right
this is
now.
also Helen's question, right? So there could be a way of talking to Helen's bigger point of Helen's, like, how do we do this? Well, you know, I'm a huge big fan. Yeah, thank you again. Thank you so much. You know, and this is like a lab where we figure this out, right? I'm a huge big fan of embodied practices. You know, I'm a meditator. I've been doing it since I was a kid. Since I heard the word meditation, my best friend at school, this is in the book, there's a lot of memoir stuff in the book, and my best friend Laura, this massive afro, we used to go around beating up people. They would quote the National Front stuff because the National Front, Nazi Party of Britain, were very active in the 70s, you know. Our idea was to identify these kids in the playground and stop them. And her mum was transcendental meditation. So, oh my God, I've got to do it. I didn't know what it was, right? And the more I do it, the more I realize it's a physically embodied. Your brain is your body. Yeah, I'm not talking about the human brain nasty thing that Blake's talking about. I'm talking about your lovely human body here, you know. And also the fact that, like, heavy ideas get etched in your brain, right? They get inscribed in your brain. And a lot of people like me are talking to this part of your brain, right, which processes 50 bits a second. This bit is 50 billion. Yeah, the ultra right is talking to this bit. We need to talk to this bit. Blake is talking to this bit, right? When he says mental fight, he's like, I'm going to invent incredible propaganda, right? Propaganda is a dirty word for art. Art is a nice word for propaganda. Or is art a dirty word for propaganda? I've never been able to figure it out quite. But Blake makes incredible propaganda. He's showing you how to do it, right? That changes this bit inside of you. That hence you're talking about it's feeling good. I'm also a fan of therapy, psychoanalysis therapy. Why? Because who cares about Oedipus? Who cares about penis, whatever that is? You know, as a graduate of 25-ish years of it, the one thing I know, for some reason, free association is a neurological lubricant. Free association allows your brain to go, and then you invite the future stuff starts to come in. You go, oh, and you start to liberate. And all you're doing is free associating. And your therapist, you realize, oh, they're not actually God. They're not actually this superior being. They're just really, really good at free association. And that's amazing. Like, so artist, right? Artist is really fun. Yeah, that Blake's created this universe, this free associative universe where all the characters are like allegorical. Are they inside me or outside me? Are they historical or political? It doesn't matter anymore. They're allegorical, so you could like apply them everywhere, right? He's bracketed it off like a good phenomenological philosophy. It's like, I don't care about what this is pointing at. I'm talking about the feeling of it, the vibe of it, right? Which is the point, you know, how to feel it, right? Like we know what to do. We know what to do. We know to stop carbon emissions and arrest all the directors of Exxon for war crimes, for lying to us for 50 years. Why aren't we doing it? Because we're not feeling it. We're not feeling it. Martin Luther King, for 1 second, didn't go, you guys have no idea how racist you actually are. You guys have no clue just how incredibly stuck in your racism you are, you terrible, bad people. Martin Luther King said, I have a dream. You know, when someone wakes up next to you and they're like, I had a dream, that feeling, like you get into this intimacy space with this guy. There's 1 million people, man march in Washington, D.C. And you're watching it on the telly in the future on YouTube. And this guy's going, I have a dream. And he's not just saying, I see the future. He's saying, the thing that you say when you're 5 millimeters away from somebody, it's, you're going to see, it's like, oh, I'm having a dream. That the physical, quiet, unspeakable mysteriousness of that, you've already won. He's already won. He's already won. Because saying I have a dream is allowing people to imagine the future, plus he's your lover, waking up next to you, I was dreaming just now, I'm dreaming. In public, he's ready to do it. That's why it's so powerful, right? Like, why is the psychedelic band always the one that the Stalinist regime picks on, not the agitprop one, but the like Plastic People of the Universe was the really bad guys in Czechoslovakia, right? Why is Pussy Riot so threatening to Putin, right? Because Blake reason, whoever controls the nonsense controls the world, right? We can advertise amazing stuff because it's amazing, right? They're trying to sell products to us that are toxic and horrible and poison. They're trying to sell racism. They're trying to sell transphobia. We can do it 5 times better than them with more amazing sound and music because we got nice ideas, right? Someone needs to produce propaganda that's 5 times more amazing. That's all. It's not a big ask.
So, sorry, I'm laughing. I remember reading in your book about the Just Stop Oil protest with the paint on the Van Gogh's sunflowers, and what an amazing transformative moment that was. But that's, and how what we're all calling for really is for the Holy Spirit, for us to
exactly
channel it. But again, there are so many people asking questions. Can I ask people to keep ask your question, but keep it tight if you can, because there are quite a few hands up now. But next I'd like to call Connor Costick. So Connor, if you could get your video on.
Sure. Hi. Thanks again. Add my thanks, and I look forward to replaying this because there's so many rich ideas in what you were saying, Tim. In even just throwaway sentences, I want to contemplate them. I've two questions, very short ones though. When you talked about Eeyore, it made me think of the people in the story of Job who told him, "You must be doing something wrong." I'd like to hear your reading of Job, and then perhaps unrelated, but perhaps because magic happens when you throw together 2 things that are unrelated. I'd very much like to hear your take on Blake's probably second most popular work, Tiger.
Mm-hmm.
So they're my questions: Job and Tiger.
Beautiful. Thank you thank you so much. So first of all, Connor, I've been listening to Vaughan Williams's Job every day for weeks. It's the only thing I can hear, because it's my life right now. It's just like it's just gone down so many different types of toilet since this conversion born again thing. And like these accidents happened to me, the last of which was a fire in my house. My house nearly burned down a few days ago. Yeah. And it's like, it's nothing like Job. It's nowhere near, but it's got this feeling of why, what, you know? And Vaughan Williams's ballet, Mask for Dancing, is based on the Blake pictures, right? And so that's the connect. When I hear that music, I'm hearing a Blake reader doing music. You know, like one of the first things I ever heard was Vaughan Williams's Fifth, and it was Andre Previn production. And on the cover is a Samuel Palmer etching, brilliant, Early Morning. It is that. It's this beautiful, ethereal, spiritual, like it's the ultimate war music ever, because it isn't, right? He wrote it in 1943, you know, and Job is kind of coming from there a little bit. And I played it in this youth orchestra when I was a teenager, you know. And so this question about Job is very personal for me, right? And all the way through this, what I've noticed is I am, if we're going to talk about it in Christian language, I'm your actual prodigal son. I've been running like crazy from this terrible idea of God, which is a terrible idea of God, for decades. Yeah. Only to find that the guy, whoever that is like right there. It's like the Yes, if you know Yes. I'm also coming out now as a fan of the prog group Yes. There's Awaken, truly Christian rock music, right? Like Yes, okay, they have this song called Awaken. At the end of the song is that, like the time I ran away, turned around and you were standing close to me. Or if this didn't make it in the book, it nearly did. The last thing John Anderson ever wrote, beautiful tune called In the Presence Of. He said, turn around and remember that when it gets so low, as you finally hit the ground. And this has been happening to me. I've been forced to get so low. Yeah. And I hit the ground and then I realize, oh, they're there. Yeah. Over and over and over and over and over again. And on a bad day, it's like, what the hell? This is, you know, first of all, it was dizzy and I'm falling over and I'm cutting myself. And then it was, I'm breaking my toe. And then it was my mum disowning me and never wanting to talk to me ever again. And like intense, crazy things happening in my life. Yeah. And luckily, I'm married to Trina, you know, and her mum, who basically said, this is just, this is the devil. It's the simplest explanation. You know, the devil's trying to trip you up, whatever that is, and trying to make you feel bad about it. You know, at least if you know it's the devil, you've externalized it, right? It's not your fault. Knowing it's your fault in a way is also the devil. Like, oh my God, how can I get out of this? It's what the devil says in Paradise Lost, I am hell. No, you're not. When just before the devil says that, the devil's been witness to like hundreds of lines of gorgeous, beautiful Eden. And you're seeing it through the eyes of Satan, right? He lands on the edge of paradise and he goes, wow. And then he goes, I'm hell, I can't enjoy myself. But you just did, dude. We got the evidence on the page there. And Blake is a genius reader of Milton. So Blake would have seen that, right? So that was that. Now the tiger, wow. So I thought I had that tiger figured out. I thought I had it figured out, dude. I thought I had it figured out. I thought Songs of Innocence were songs of brittle disillusionment, right? I thought it was some kind of angry Gnostic guy, like, you know, and then I thought it was maybe some kind of terrified guy, you know, Blake's showing up this terrified guy, like, how could God have created evil? Is the problem of evil is part of evil, thinking that evil is a problem. You know, like, why is there evil in the world? You've already got it wrong. You've already eaten of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, if you're asking it that way, right? So, you know, the tiger, as Schwarzenegger would say, the T-1000 prototype, liquid metal, Terminator sort of being. How could God have done that? And Blake's framing that. But I'm like, wait a minute. School kids say that poem and they say that to themselves as maybe it's the first poem I ever heard, which wasn't Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, was Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright in the Forests of the Night. Wow. That What immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? This one, because I'm Blake and I'm writing this poem, and it's called The Tiger. In what distant deeps or skies burnt the fire that night? Nowhere, because it was in my head and I just wrote it down on the page, and you're holding this poem called The Tiger. So then suddenly the tiger is the poem called The Tiger, and you're holding this poem called The Tiger. And of course, you're looking at the picture at the bottom, and it's a little cuddly toy, plushy tiger with a smile. You know, like, this stupid Terminator tiger is a stupid, this can't be the real tiger. But then you're also going, actually, the real tiger is just a paper tiger, just a tiger on paper, spelt in a funny way with a Y, which they wouldn't have done in those days, really. That's like Blake doing ye olde tiger thing to make it look antique. And then you go, oh, but actually, it could also be a kid talking to their cat, you know, what immortal hand or eye, like fierce aggression, cute, like you're so cute, you know. In other words, it could be anyone. Anyone could say that poem. The Tiger is the poem, capital T, capital P. It's the poem. It's the poem of all time. And every possible way of reading it turns into powder, every single one. Every single one, including the Gnostic one, right? Where the Gnostic guy's actually becoming God. How dare you? How dare you create the tiger? The Gnostic guy is lording it over God in the key of, I'm wrathful with this creator guy. You know, every single possible stance towards the poem collapses into powder. And yet, there's the tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night, the actual physical life form, tiger. So the poem is a tiger. It's a paper tiger, and it is the tiger. You're holding the tiger, the real, actual, the physical, the mystery tiger, like the one that goes beyond. Even if the tiger themselves went on Oprah and talked about it, that would be Tiger Interview. This is object-oriented ontology, right? Even the tiger can't access the tiger, right? I like to say banana. Blake likes to say tiger, right? There's the banana data and the banana. There's the tiger data, which is never the tiger. And then there's the tiger, you know? And so in a funny way, this isn't just a paper tiger. This is a tiger. Yeah. Wow. What did he do? You know, and the maddest line of all, when the stars threw down their spears and watered heaven with their tears, you know, so, oh yes, starlight. I love it. They look up at the sky, that these stars. Was it this war in heaven? I don't know. That's an image. It's just an image. But then again, so are the stars just an image. You know, my friend Laurie Anderson did this piece about the moon, this VR piece. It's brilliant, very uncanny. Yeah, you're inhabiting the body of this astronaut, and somewhere in the middle, you die, and you see your body floating away in front of you. Yeah, Laurie's voice comes on the headphones. You know, you're on the moon here, black and white. You're looking at the sky there. Says, you know what I love most about the stars? We can't hurt them.
Wow. Okay. Wow. So I got quite emotional there, Tim. I'm trying to be the chair here, but especially what you said about, you know, the quoting yes, and I turn around and he's there. And, you know, as an old punk rocker, I'm astonished to find myself moved by Yes, but I happen to know that Connor Costick is a Yes fan, so he'll be very happy with that. We're running out of time. We've got probably time for one or two more questions, but can I say, I have so much I'd have liked to ask myself, but I just let everybody know I will be doing I'll be doing a podcast with Tim in the next few weeks at some point, and I've saved everybody's questions that are in the chat, and I'll be able to, well, I'll share them with him anyway, but we'll be able to follow up a lot of the things that have been raised. But we have got time for a few more questions. Again, if we can keep it tight, we get more people in. But Matthew Govertz, you've been waiting quite a while. As has Sam and David. I hope we can get in. But Matthew, over to you.
Yes, hello, thank you. Well, thank you so much for this talk, and I'll try to be very quick. But I've been reading a few of your pieces on Shelley and Spinoza, and I was wondering, because some of the things that you just said reminded me of the things that you wrote in those pieces there. If you ever tried to sort of make the connection between Blake and Spinoza, if there is one possible, a very thin one though. So I wanted to know your take on things.
So Spinoza is a kind of radical materialist, right? He got kicked out of Judaism for saying that the universe was basically God. And, you know, really, you know, then you can drop the idea of God, you know. And I think the fundamental, this is a stupid answer, but it's probably the best answer, right? So Blake was a poet, yeah? Blake did this art, you know. Blake didn't make big philosophical statements about reality. The amazing thing is you can kind of reverse engineer it from the Blake. But some of these statements are statements that evaporate, like I've just been demonstrating. They're ideas that kind of evaporate, leaving behind a sense of the palpable unspeakability of the world, you know. And in a way, it is a radical difference between philosophy and theology. You know, on a good day, philosophy isn't trying to be right, actually. On a good day, philosophy is the clown. You know, on a good day, philosophy is very much Blake also, you know, in the sense of Socrates just kind of going along with somebody else and making them realize they don't know what they're doing. He's just miming. You know, is he messing with your head when he says, I don't know anything? Is he messing with your head when he like Columbo? You know, I just have one more question to make the other guy's head explode. Or is he literally saying, actually, I really don't know. I really don't know stuff. You know, I think the latter. Yeah. So there's a part of me that prefers the Socrates vibe and then also the Blake vibe, where you're always dialogically walking with someone in a dialogue, which is kind of playful back and forth, to the Spinoza way, which is, I'm going to show you point 1, point 2, point 3. Are you still with me? Point 4, there isn't a God. Point 5, point 6, point 7, this is what you do. Point 8, you know, Blake has one version of that, which is there is no natural religion. All religions are one. And I suddenly noticed, and I wrote to the North American Association for Studies in Romanticism, where's point 3? There is no point 3. Is there any point 3 in existence? And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Blake Society, because people may have seen, but I hear from, you know, Joe Viscomi that there's no copy of There Is No Natural Religion with a point 3. He deliberately didn't put in a point 3. Point 1, point 2, point 3, blank. Yeah, because he's messing with you, that idea that there has to be the and then now you agree with me, I'm gonna There is no point 3. It's the Sherlock Holmes smoking gun that didn't exist, right? There was no barking dog. Wow. No Spinoza guy would do that. There's no point 3. Yeah, that's Blake going, you know, imagination. I'm going to make you feel it because I'm an artist. I'm going to make you feel. I don't care about it's real or it's better or it's whatever it is. I don't care. I'm going to make you feel it, because can you feel it is from the future. You know, the best ever version of Martin Luther King is called Can You Feel It? It's in the book. It's by Mr. Fingers, Larry Hurd. It's Acid House. Talking of punk, I'm a punk insofar as I am a beneficiary of 1988, which is very strongly in the book. 1988 is basically punks on ecstasy, right? Like a whole bunch of people who did roadies for Killing Joke and stuff formed these bands like KLF and The Orb, and they took a lot of MDMA. They did this thing, and they connected to black gay people, creating these clubs in Detroit and Chicago. And Mr. Fingers was from, I believe, Detroit. Correct me if I'm wrong, could be Chicago. But anyway, techno, right? And he set Martin Luther King's speech perfectly to this bass line that is actually every note of it is perfect, as a kind of counterpoint to the I Have a Dream, right? And it's basically like inviting the future into the room. Can you feel it? Can you feel it? Where is the can you feel it of global planetary politics, right? We're not feeling it. In the name of another corny band, prog band, Rush, we don't know what international means. We're not feeling it until we feel it, right? Like Black Lives Matter and Me Too are great because they're planetary scale, right? We need planet scale. Wow, we live on a planet. Clearly the hippie Carl Sagan Earth from Space isn't doing it, you know, which for a simple reason, Earth from Space is a kind of bird's garage, evil gaze thing, you know. This is doing work with Pharrell. What I did with Pharrell Williams, we talked to NASA about what was going to go on Voyager 3, which never was created. So there's me and Pharrell telling NASA what to put on Voyager 3. And part of my speech was going to be, Carl Sagan's pale blue dot is actually an evil hippie gaze from point of... I suddenly realized everyone in the room, apart from Pharrell and his people, are employees of Carl Sagan, who probably hired him. So I was really rewriting this lecture as I was doing it. And suddenly, I can't diss people to this level. They're from NASA. I can't do it. But it's true. And Milton's heaven, Milton's sky is much more interesting. He's like, maybe there are extraterrestrials, you know? But he just, the way he describes it, he gets you to feel it, right? He gets you to feel, yeah, the cosmic in this non-judgmental way, right? He describes the stars as like sapphires, living sapphires. Wow. Blake, wow, living sapphires, wow, you know. So this isn't Spinoza. Spinoza can't do that, and I'm preferring that right now, because in the end, this is really thinking is letting yourself be stupid enough to allow the elephant in the room, which is the feeling you're having, to haunt you.
Tim,
You know,
I'm going to have to stop you just because time is against us. I was on a Facebook group today with some young Lacanians talking about your new book and Zizek's new book on Christian atheism or whatever it is. But somebody said, you know, I've seen Tim Morton talk about this and he's crazy. You know,
they hate me. They hate me.
crazy.
20-something Lacanian, Hegelian Marxist boys since 2010, since I started talking about the objects, hate me. They hate me. They hate me. In the name of an invisible white guy with a beard called Slavoj Žižek, they beat up on this middle-aged guy who's trying to figure something out different. Right, it's how it feels. Like these poor people, just some white boys stumbling towards, oh wow, maybe actually this pencil is alive. Whoa, from inside Western philosophy. What the hell? Like, whoa, what?
Well, it was,
You know?
it was lovely to hear you end on with the defense of crazy wisdom and, you know, the laughing Socrates and so on. But we are out of time, and I want to apologize to everybody whose question wasn't
It's my fault.
asked.
Listen to my motor mouth voice.
Well, like I say, you know, I'm going to put the questions to Tim. I'll pass them on to him, and I will be doing another podcast with him. Check the link in the chat. I particularly want to apologise to Sam Knott and David Fallon. Their little yellow hands have been up for ages, and even though it's just a digital hand, I imagine them getting exhausted with their hands been up the last.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry you didn't get called Sam and David, but you know, there's time for more questions in future in the podcast. But on behalf of everyone here tonight, I want to thank you, Tim, for such a fantastic meeting. And I told the Blake Society about your forthcoming book as soon as I heard about it months ago. I'm so anxious to read it, and I do think it's a book that certainly every Blakean should read. And it's fantastically personal, fantastically, to me, whatever the young Lacanians say, fantastically coherent. And actually, you know, it's the kind of, whatever they think about it, it's the kind of intellect I like to see at work, and the kind of feeling, you know, the feeling in the room. So thank you so much, Tim. And with that said, I'd like to hand over to Stephen Pritchard from the Blake Society to do whatever Stephen does.
Thank you to you both so much. And Tim, thank you for, to use Blake's phrase, the mysterious offering of self that you've treated us to tonight, that has been both bracing and relaxing all at the same time, again, to use Blake's words. And yeah, what wonderful wake-up call for us all. And
the only reason why I didn't do this previously is because I wanted to do it so much.
Yes. Yeah.
You see what I mean? And so me talking to you is incredibly meaningful to me, and I'm very grateful to you for having me.
It's a great joy for us. And Andy, thank you so much. It's down to Andy that we had Tim's presence this evening, and what a presence it was. I'm going away now to listen to Tales from Topographic Oceans, which is my personal favorite, because that's especially cosmic. And I hope that we'll see you both again very soon, separately or together. So that would be. Thank you very much.
I'm part of you now. So yeah, very much.
In some ways, I think you always were, Tim.
Oh gosh.
Thank you ever so much. Yeah. Good night, everybody. And farewell. Thanks again.